Ontario schools are facing a province-wide strike on Friday. The union, representing 55,000 school board employees, is defying the Ford government's attempt to head off a confrontation with new anti-strike legislation introduced today.
But a showdown between the government and Labour is growing. Al Sweeney reports.
Facing a strike deadline of Friday, the Ford government introduced legislation today to head off any strike.
An act to resolve labour disputes.
The legislation imposes a new contract on members of the Canadian Union of Public Employees who work in schools, such as custodians and teaching assistants.
This legislation will prohibit strikes and lockouts during the term of operation of the collective agreements.
But the immediate reaction was defiance.
It is a monstrous overreach. They have employed the nuclear option here, trampling on constitutionally protected rights of workers.
CUPE leader Fred Hahn says the legislation won't stop a strike by low-paid workers who need a raise.
On Friday, regardless of what this legislation says, our members will be engaging in a province-wide protest. That means no CUPE education worker will be at work.
CUPE says the strike could go beyond Friday into next week.
That will be, left up to what happens. I think it's time for this government to understand people are not in support of them.
And Anthony Marco of the Hamilton and District Federation of Labour sent out a tweet saying, if the Ford government passes anti-strike legislation against a union before a strike even happens, workers, both union and non, should be ready to shut down Ontario on Friday. One commenter wrote, I 100% support a general strike across the province. The government's new legislation would give the CUPE workers raises of between 2.5% and 1.5%. They were asking for 11.7 a year for 3 years. The legislation also calls for massive fines against union members of $4,000 for any defiance and $500,000 against the union itself. CUPE says it'll pay the fines and support the workers.
If that bill passes before Friday, it doesn't matter. If they say it's illegal to strike, then we will be on a political protest.
Honestly, the government is hoping it doesn't come to a strike.
And I really hope that over the coming days we could come to our senses and there will not be a strike that impacts children on Friday, that they will stay in school every day.
And the government says it's prepared to use its constitutional override power to head off any challenge to its new legislation. Political commentator Keith Leslie says the Ford government is trying to prevent the CUPE negotiations from becoming a pattern for other unions.
They're setting the tone for all the other education, the 4 other teachers unions they have to negotiate with. The government is also putting itself on the side of parents, of course, who find it very, very disruptive and quite stressful to try and find daycare when there's a strike at the school.
After school this afternoon, parents were just hearing about a possible strike and didn't have much to say, except everybody suffers in a situation like this.
I think we're going to end up with a worse quality of education, just like our hospitals are crumbling right now.
So the response from school boards has been mixed. Some have said they'll shut down the schools if there's a strike Friday. Others indicate they'll assess conditions as they develop. Now, the legislature is going to be sitting at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning so it can get the legislation passed by Thursday night.